Hello everyone and welcome to Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I have two favors to ask of you. One, please subscribe if you're not already. And two, use my affiliate links whenever you're shopping for parts and gear. I really appreciate that. All right, this is the 2025 updated Yamaha Tenere 700. And I've just purchased this bike for long-term review. For 2025, Yamaha have made a number of key updates to this motorcycle, including new revised suspension, ride-by-wire throttle, the introduction of traction control, and a host of other small improvements. In a few minutes, I'm going to walk through this bike with you and show you all the updates in depth. The Tenere 700 remains one of the top choices for hardcore adventure riders around the globe because of its unique combination of performance and unmatched reliability. Common complaints that have developed about the Tenere 700 over the years have been to do with things like mediocre suspension performance, lack of cruise control, lack of tubeless wheels, and some top heaviness when the bike is at a standstill. For 2025, Yamaha have made some attempts to at least address some of these areas. All right, so why did I buy the 2025 Tenere 700? I probably could have borrowed a bike from Yamaha. However, it's been kind of hit and miss in terms of getting bikes from them and working with them. I probably could have done that, but I felt that this is such an important bike and it's a pretty big update to the bike that I think it deserves more of that 6 to 12 month long-term review. So, I've recently purchased the bike sitting here next to me, which is the 390 Adventure. I purchased this, and I'm selling some of my personal bikes so that I will make the time and the space to actually put miles on the test bikes. I think that's a really good way to go for this channel going forward. Another reason that I bought this bike is, frankly, I've missed riding the Tenere 700. A lot of you may think that because I've said some negative things about them compared to other bikes that I don't like the T7. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is one of my favorite motorcycles ever produced. I love this bike for so many reasons, and it is a joy to ride. It really, really is, and it has such good capability. Yes, there are some things that I think could have been improved, and we're starting to see things go in that direction, although we'll talk about some of the areas where they probably still need to consider making some changes. Another reason I bought this is I haven't really seen many videos or other reviews out there on the 2025 with all the updates covering all the changes that they've made. There hasn't been a press launch in the US, there hasn't been any mention of press bikes, and really hasn't been enough coverage. So I kind of saw a gap in the reviews for this model, and so I wanted to go ahead and try to fill that gap. Now, I want to be clear, I don't plan to keep this bike more than 6 to 12 months. So I will eventually need to sell it to buy another project, another long-term review bike in the future. That's how I'm doing things here. This is not a motorcycle that I'm buying for myself and riding for the next 5 or 10 years. I know that's different from many of you. I understand that. But remember, Big Rock Media is a review business. All right, so what did I pay for this motorcycle? So I'm not sponsored by Yamaha. I'm not sponsored by anything. I didn't get any special deal through a dealership or whatever. I had to negotiate just like you would, and that's part of what I like, why I like doing this kind of review series, is because it puts me in the position of, basically a normal consumer. Now, do I have some advantage of being a YouTuber? Yes, and some dealerships may be giving me a little bit better price because of that, but it's not as much different as you would think. And I don't expect dealerships to lose money just so that a YouTuber can go make videos. I don't have that attitude, so I'm okay paying what other people pay. So here's what I paid for this. The bike was $11,000, and they didn't give any discount on that because it's a 2025. I'm in Southern California. They don't need to discount it. They're going to sell it, right? If it was a previous year model, I'm sure I would have been able to get a much better deal, but there would be no point of doing that. Obviously, I wanted to buy the new model. There was a $300 setup fee by the dealer to assemble the bike. That was reasonable. There was $600 freight. That's what basically I think that they're paying Yamaha for the shipping of the bike to get to the dealership. Sometimes that's negotiable, but usually I feel like I end up paying that. That was $600. There was a $100 document fee by the dealership to do the paperwork. There was $900 in California sales tax. There was $250 in DMV or license, basically the bike's registration fee for the California DMV. So all that totaled up to $13,200. So $13,200 US, that's what I paid to get this motorcycle. Now, fortunately for me, there was no tariff on this motorcycle. So when this motorcycle was imported by Yamaha, at that time of import, the US government was not charging an extra tariff. That's why this didn't get hit with that. It's also possible, and I can't confirm this, it's possible that there was some sort of small tariff and Yamaha just absorbed that and didn't add it to the price of the bike. That's also possible, so either could be true. Now, in the video, the first episode I did on the 390 Adventure R, which many of you have seen, I wrongly said, and I apologize, that the tariff is a direct consumer tax. That's not technically true. A tariff is a tax on imports. So a bike comes in, the US government says to the importer, in this case, which would be Yamaha North America, you owe us this tax to bring this bike in. Now at that point, the company, whether it's Yamaha, KTM, or any company importing goods, can either absorb a part or all of that tax, thereby significantly reducing their profit margin, or they can choose to pass the cost of that tariff onto the consumer, which is usually what happens. And that's not my opinion, that's a fact that you can go out and confirm. And in fact, that is what happened with the KTM. They passed that entire amount on to me as the consumer. So I had to pay the $700 tariff for the KTM, which Yamaha collects, and then Yamaha sending that money to the US government because it is in fact federal government tax on the vehicle. So yeah, that's how the tariffs work, and it doesn't seem like there was a tariff on this motorcycle, which was great for me because it made it a little bit more affordable. And by the way, just to clarify, there was a lot of comments in the previous video. There was a lot of comments in that video. There were some people saying that it had to do with California. No, the federal tariff is a federal tax. It has nothing to do with California, so I don't know why people kept bringing that up. I have no idea. And then also people were saying that it was my dealer ripping me off. That's also obviously not true, and I have no idea where people are coming up with that idea. The tariff is a federal government tax. It's money that goes to our federal government in the form of a tax. It has nothing to do with the dealership. My dealership did not get that money. My federal government is getting that money. So these are facts, and not politics or anything, just how the money actually works, and I just want to be clear about that. I also want to clarify some of the different models, that the Tenere has. In the USA, we've always only gotten the base model, and that's still the case for 2025. Other countries have gotten these great additions, the World Raid, the Rally, I guess they had something called the Extreme. I don't know too well because we don't get them in the United States, which is terribly disappointing, and there's no real answer to why that is. If any of you know why that is, I would love to know the actual reason, if there is one, why we don't get the upgraded versions of this, because we would all be buying them, including myself, if that was the case. So if you know the reason, let me know, but we don't get those. So the only bike we get is the base. Now you can get two different colors, and then in terms of price, it went up only $200 in price. I think that's a screaming deal because of all the improvements that they've made. All right, let's start out with what has not changed. Okay, so first of all, the price only went up by about $200. I think that's really reasonable considering all the improvements they made, and you factor in inflation, I think that's actually a really good deal. So the weight of the bike. All right, so it changed only a tiny bit. So I'm listing it under things that didn't change very much. So we gained a few pounds, maybe a couple kilograms. So let's cut here to where I actually weighed the bike on my scales. All right, weigh in on the 2025 Tenere 700 bone stock, 90% full of fuel. I've got 230, I'm going to call it 234 at the back. I always round up, and 224 at the front. Always like to round up. So 224 plus 234. That comes out to 458 pounds, which is right where Yamaha says it should be. So I'm happy to report that my measured weight equals the weight that Yamaha has quoted. All right, so the weight really didn't change very much, maybe a few pounds of weight gain versus the 2024, so I don't think that's really a negligible difference, really. Okay, so the engine. Now, thankfully, Yamaha decided, of course, to stick with the venerable CP2 engine. It's a legend at this point for its reliability, for its smoothness, for its power delivery. It's one of the best motorcycle engines probably ever made. At this point, it's just such a legend. So the power output is the same, 73 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque, or 68 newton meters of torque. Now, they did change the air intake duct or tract to make it shorter to improve low-end torque, move the power curve around a little bit, but absolute output remains the same. The seat height has not changed. So they did change the seat, and we'll talk about that, but it's still 34.4 inches or 875 millimeters. There is a low version of this bike available, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Another thing that didn't change is the size of the fuel tank, although they've repositioned it slightly, and we'll talk about that. It's still 16 liters or 4.2 gallons. It still has tube tires and tube type wheels. Now, this debate is never going to end between the hardcore off-road riders who want the tubes, and then on the other side, the touring and travel-oriented riders who want the convenience of tubeless for fixing punctures more easily. So really, it's just pros and cons with tubed versus tubeless, although the internet comments would make you think it's a one-sided thing where everybody wants tubeless. That's not really the case. In terms of Yamaha's decision to stick with tube tires, I can't speak for them, but maybe it has to do with cost, simplicity, budget, or just the robustness of the setup when you have a strong wheel and a tube in the tire for off-road use. Now, they still didn't give us any cruise control. They've revised the switches, they've gone to throttle by wire. So it's very interesting and I think very frustrating for many of us that Yamaha gave the bike ride-by-wire electronic throttle and then decided not to give us cruise control. It's a very strange decision and many people are very frustrated by it. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. Now, the good news is that hopefully companies like Viridian Cruise and maybe others will be able to tap into the electronics and give us a plug-and-play electronic cruise system. If that is the case, that's going to change the decision for people perhaps to actually now get this bike, because if you can add electronic cruise for a few $100s, that's going to be a huge, huge plus. Another thing they haven't changed is the placement of the exhaust. It's hanging way out here like this, as you can see, and it's very vulnerable. When you drop these motorcycles on the previous versions, this would push in towards the bike. It could bend the exhaust hanger, which is welded to the frame instead of a bolt-on piece like it should be. So in addition to possibly bending the subframe, you're also pushing the exhaust into the swing arm. Then when you start riding after you've fallen over, your exhaust will be hitting your swing arm and causing damage to the motorcycle. This is confirmed. I mean, everybody knows this is a problem. I've seen it happen with my own two eyes with these bikes. So I'm not sure. Now, they did say they did make this stronger, so we'll have to somehow find a way to test that or compare it to the old bike. All right, another thing that they didn't improve, which I think we were all hoping they would, is that when you turn off your ABS on this bike, we're going to talk about traction control in a minute. When you have it turned off for off-road riding, and I'm not talking about the complete ABS system being turned off, just the rear wheel ABS turning off, and it also turned off your traction control with the same button, which is good. And on the 2025, they've given us back this to turn it off. I think the 2024 bike was weird in that way. I don't think you had that, as I recall. But anyway, what happens is when you power cycle the bike using the key, the ABS turns back onto the back wheel. And of course, your traction control resets as well. Now, why is this? Because when you're off-road, you need that system to stay off, and especially how you're going to ride a bike like this off-road. It's so capable. Why would you want ABS coming back on every single time you turn the bike back on? And some people will say, well, it's a legal thing. Well, no, that's not the case. And you know how I know it's not the case is because almost all European motorcycles, including that bike, including these two bikes over here, when you turn off the rear ABS on a lot of motorcycles and you power cycle the bike, it still stays off and it remembers your settings. But for some reason, it seems like popular with the Japanese brands in particular, they will turn the systems back on. It's very frustrating. And on the previous Teneres, you would get a dongle or a thing from LSK Electronics or something like that. You'd plug it into the bike and then it would remember the settings. Hopefully they're coming out with that for the 2025, because it is super annoying when riding off-road every single time to have to do this. Now thankfully they give you a button and it's pretty easy to do, but still I don't understand this fascination with resetting it every single time you turn the bike off and on, because the competitors don't do that. Okay, so one challenge for the Tenere 700 as an adventure platform has been it tends to carry its weight pretty high. So when I sit on this bike, and I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters tall with the 32-inch inseam, I'm kind of on my tiptoes. The seat height is, you know, it's high for an adventure bike. It's not the highest out there, but it's one of the higher ones. And so I'm a little bit on my tiptoes. Now, does this motorcycle carry its weight? And with the update, so for 2025, Yamaha says that the fuel tank has been moved down and forward. But when you look at it, it doesn't appear to be much different. So I'm sure that they're right, that it has been slightly adjusted, but I'm not honestly feeling a huge difference in the weight balance of the bike. And by appearances, it doesn't seem like the fuel is that much lower. However, there may be a slight improvement. This motorcycle definitely has a little bit more top-heavy, tippy of a feel when at a standstill. I'm not talking about when riding, but when at a standstill, than its competitors. So it feels more top-heavy than a Tuareg, yes, than a Transalp, yes, and even a little bit more than the V-Strom, which weighs quite a bit more on paper. I think it's the design of the engine and the fuel tank and how the weight is carried on the motorcycle. It's not an issue when you're riding. The bike handles phenomenal when you're riding it. It's just kind of at the stop. Now, when you start to get the bike leaned over about this much, I have a really hard time holding it up from there. I'm about to drop it when I get it leaned there. So I don't have handguards on this bike yet, so I'm not going to smash it to the ground because these are the factory kind of splash guard plastic things. So I'm going to gently lower it and lift it and see maybe if we can notice any improvement. I mean, it falls flat. There's nothing you can do about that. That's just the nature of this bike's design, and most bikes, unless you're talking about a GS with the boxer motor. So now the challenge is if I can lift it without hurting myself. It's still pretty much as difficult as before. I can't really honestly tell you if it's better than the previous bike. I just don't, without having it right here next to me, I couldn't tell you, but it's very difficult. This is one of the, for any weight, this is one of the most difficult adventure bikes to lift. You can criticize my technique, and I try a lot of different techniques in lifting bikes, that's fine, but this is just objectively difficult to get up, much more so than its competitors, and much more so even than bikes in some cases that weigh much more. So it's too bad that they couldn't really address that somehow. Now I think maybe having crash bars, having good handguards so the bike doesn't fall quite as flat, and then working on your technique, people do ride these bikes and they drop them and they lift them all the time, so it is doable. But as somebody who tests everything, I'm telling you, this is tough. All right, now probably the most fun part of the video. Let's go in depth about everything that is new or has been changed for 2025. So I've got my huge list here, which I'm not going to read off of it, but I'm going to go through the bike with you, but this is my notes. So we're going to start. I'm going to try to start with some of the bigger changes and then go to some of the smaller stuff, but it's not necessarily in order. I want to start with a new TFT screen. All right, this new TFT is absolutely gorgeous. It is, no joke, one of my new favorite motorcycle dashboards that I've ever used. It is so crisp and contrasty. It doesn't wash out in the sun. It is big and legible. All the numbers are huge. You can see them even if you have old eyes that are bad. It's easy to navigate. You've got a mode button over here, which you can do things here at the bottom, like your ABS, traction control, your power modes. You can switch the screen layout as well. And so yeah, if I go into themes and I go into explore, now I get this layout. The screen is simply gorgeous. It is big, and what a huge improvement from the 2020 to 2023, the LCD Game Boy screen, and then even it's a big improvement from the 2024 bike. This is bigger, brighter, and has more functions in it. Now personally, I like this layout here. So that's what I like to use. Okay, a big update that they've done is they have gone away from throttle cables and given us ride-by-wire. You can see here, no more cable, you got ride-by-wire. Now, thank God. This is such an improvement, and I'm so glad they've done this. Now, why do I say that? I know there's going to be a few people in the comments saying, well, throttle cables are old school, they're trusted. You know, why do we need to go to a more modern system? Because the more modern system is more reliable, less moving parts, less prone to failure because you don't have a mechanical cable. It gives you a better throttle response and the ability to change the throttle response by doing different engine mapping from aftermarket companies, or it also has power modes built into the bike to change the throttle response, which is very useful when you're riding in different conditions. It also gives us the ability, hopefully, fingers crossed, to add electronic cruise control via the aftermarket, or Yamaha could decide to put on their own cruise control because it's ride-by-wire. So the benefits of the ride-by-wire, and I've been out riding this bike, the throttle response is so much crisper and cleaner and smoother and less jerky than the old bikes. Not that the old bikes were all that bad, they were actually okay, but this is just much better. So that's great. Now, the other advantage of this is we get traction control. Now, I know I'm going to get more comments saying, well, we didn't want traction control. I get what you're saying. I do. You know, the appeal of this bike has been simplicity and not having a bunch of rider aids. But hear me out. Most people with adventure bikes ride them on the street most of the time. Touring, commuting to work, doing the things you have to do. Riding on the highway maybe to get to the trails you want to go. Traction control adds to the safety of the bike. You've got ABS brakes. Okay, that is a wonderful safety feature that everybody should have when they're riding on the street. Now you've got traction control. The idea of ABS and traction control, both of the systems, is to prevent the bike from having an accident when you make too abrupt of a control input. Many of you out there, many riders I should say, have accidents on their motorcycles because they're making abrupt control inputs, either because they're tired or it's a panic situation or they just make a mistake. So it's raining, there's oil on the road, you get a little bit too much throttle coming out of a corner or roundabout or something. Now you've got traction control to save your butt from sliding out. It's awesome. It's saved me many times on many different motorcycles, and I love having it. It makes the bike better, okay? Now, the counter argument is you don't want this off-road. Now, that's true on this bike because Yamaha did not develop an off-road traction control system as other manufacturers have done. I wish they would have done that, but they didn't. What they did was give us a street traction control. So it needs to be turned off for off-road. Now, if you're just on a flat dirt road and you're not really like riding the bike much and you're just cruising, yeah, you can leave the traction control on, it's okay. But it's not gonna give you any power when you want power. So for off-road, you've got to really turn it off. anything more than like a flat dirt road. The way to do that, they've tied it into this ABS button here. Hold that down, traction control is off, rear ABS is off. I like that. That's a good implementation. Thank you, Yamaha, for tying it together with that. That was a good call. Now you can also do it by hitting mode, and you can go and do ABS and traction control here. Now you can also, let's see, I think if you hold this, so you can also, if you hold down this button here in the down position, you can turn ABS off to both the front and the back. That's really, really good. Some bikes don't allow you to do that. If you're extreme off-roading, you may need to turn that front ABS off if you're really hardcore off-roading this bike. They give you the ability to do that. So that's great. Now at any time, if you just click that button, traction control ABS turns back on. So when you get back to the highway, click this button and you've got your safety systems back in place. Okay, one of the things that people have always had an issue with on these Teneres is the suspension was mediocre. Okay, it wasn't terrible, it wasn't that good either. And that's why you see so many of these with a lot of money spent on suspension upgrades. All right, now they did revise the suspension, actually quite a bit. And some people don't know this, that they've done this for 2025. That's one of the reasons I really want to make this video and do this review on this bike. So now the travel hasn't changed. It's still 210 millimeter or 8.3 inches in the front, and in the back it's still 7.9 or 200 millimeters. So it's not class-leading travel by any means. You know, KTM has more, Tuareg has more, V-Strom has more, but okay, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal to have an inch less travel than maybe the KTM. What they have done to revise the suspension. So the first thing they've done is, you can see right here, they've added preload adjusters to the front forks. That's great. This will allow you to adjust the ride height of your bike, because you've had the rear preload, which you still have, but now you can change the ride height of the front as well. That can change the ride characteristic, how the suspension performs. It can compensate for weight. It can also make the bike, you know, steer faster or steer slower depending on your preference, because you can dial this preload in or out. You would be shocked the difference that adding or taking out preload on the front suspension will make. I've tested this on other bikes and it is dramatic. Just adding a little bit of front preload changes the geometry of the bike, or taking it out, and you can optimize the bike for the conditions you're in. That's fantastic that we now have that. On the front fork, they've also, it still has compression and rebound adjustment. They've added the preload. They've also revised the internals of the fork, so different damping, probably different shim stacks and things like that. The suspension action is better, and we'll get into that in the ride reviews, but it's significantly improved, smoother, more refined, less harsh than the outgoing bike is. Now on the back suspension, what they've done here is they've given us a new shock with new settings and new internals, so it rides differently, and they've changed the linkage ratio. They've changed the linkage ratio, and that changes how the bike rides and how the rear suspension performs. The T7 has always had kind of a harsh ride quality, especially from the back. And that's just been a fact of how this bike rides because of the setup that it has. It's gotten better. It's not hugely better, but it is better. And we'll talk about that when we go and ride the bike in the next episode. So overall, they've done quite a bit to make the suspension much better. It is still a shame that we don't get the rally version in the USA. It's not up to that level, but for the base bike has seen a big improvement in suspension, and I think that's 2 thumbs up. Starting to get into some of the other things they've done, they've revised the gearbox, they've revised the shifting, so new internals which make shifting better. Also, you now can get from Yamaha, as an additional extra you have to pay for, a quick shifter, which is bi-directional. On the 2024 they added one, but it was only one direction, which I thought was super silly. Now you can get a bi-directional quick shifter, which I am going to get for this bike. Once I figure out when it's available or what it costs, I will be adding that and testing that. That sounds fantastic. Riding with a quick shifter, if you've never had one, you don't know what you're missing. It's like, it's one of those things where when you start to ride with it, you realize how much better a ride having a quick shifter or the auto blipper makes. It makes riding a motorcycle safer, faster, smoother, and more enjoyable, because one less thing to do, not clutching up and down every shift. It's smoother shifting, more consistent power delivery. Coming into corners is smoother and better with less upsetting the chassis of the bike. The quick shifter is a radical improvement for any motorcycle, and I'm so glad we can now get that. It's too bad it's not standard, because on the V-Strom and the Transalp, it's standard. On this bike, you have to pay extra to get it. The seat is now one piece, so you used to have the two-piece seat, now you've got a one-piece seat. It's still the same seat height, and there are still low and rally tall seats available, so we'll just have to see if there's any difference in comfort there, but I don't have too much high hopes for that, honestly, after riding it for just about an hour or so. The switchgear is new, so we've kind of showed this a little bit, but you've got all new switchgear, and I really like it. It's super high quality, great to use. The turn signals takes a little getting used to because there's no cancel button. You have to press it again to cancel it. You've got hazard lights now, the horns there. You've got this four-way joystick. These aren't buttons, but you use this joystick, and that works really well. Home, return button. And over here you've got a mode button, the stop-start. Overall, it's phenomenal. Some of the best switchgear I've used. Super intuitive to use with the TFT. I love that. All right, the headlight of the bike is also new. So it's a different design, as you can see. From far away, it kind of looks like it might be similar, but then you get close to it and it's got these individual kind of LEDs. I think it's cool. I'm stoked. I really like it. Another thing they've done is they've revised the clutch cover here on the engine. So the old bike had some stuff kind of sticking out here. Now you can see how much better this is. You don't have anything kind of on your leg or your boot here. This has been tucked in more, so that's a nice improvement. Also, what they've done, they've relocated and redesigned the side stand switch. So I don't remember how the old one looked, and I'm sorry my strap is in the way here because I've got the bike on the lift. But you can see they put it under here under this metal protective cover, which I like. I don't know, it seems like a good, robust design that they've done, but time will tell. But I know that they've improved that from the previous bike. They've revised the air intake, so it still has the same kind of airbox setup under the seat with the snorkel and all of that, but they've made the air intake tract shorter so that you get a little bit better torque at low RPM. It is noticeable. This bike runs better, feels more powerful and smoother at low RPM than the old bike did. Just adds to that refinement and moves the power around a little bit. The windshield is a new design. The old bike had like 3 pieces on the windshield. This whole clear thing here is now one piece around here. So that will mean that the aftermarket companies have to make new windshields now. But I think this just looks cleaner and seems more like refined, or just, I don't know, more high-end, I guess, so I like it. Thank God. Here's one thing they've done. Look, you get a normal fuel cap now. You don't have the stupid cap that comes off anymore. Now you just get what most other motorcycles already had, which is a normal fuel filler. I love that. Thank you, Yamaha. The exhaust hanger, a point of contention. I already mentioned that in the previous section of the video. It's a big issue with these bikes in the past. They say they've made this stronger, but it's still welded, to the subframe, and it's still, I think the basic setup is the same, so this can still get pushed in, but we'll just have to do some testing and maybe compare it to the old bike. I don't know how much stronger it is, but I think what we would have liked to have seen would be a removable exhaust hanger, and maybe even move this exhaust up, because why does it have to be hanging way out here down low in space like that? It makes luggage complicated, and it's just super vulnerable, because when you fall over, this gets damaged, and I don't know why they have that design. The foot pegs are actually quite a bit bigger, and I really love these foot pegs. Now, these rubber thingies, I'm going to pull these out as soon as I'm done filming this video. I just left them in here for filming the bike overview video, but look how much bigger they are. These are great. I think that's going to kill the aftermarket for sure on the foot pegs. Like, I don't see many people having to upgrade these whatsoever. Another thing they've done, they fixed, you know how on the old bikes you had to get the reinforcement thing because this whole assembly would wobble? That's not the case anymore. This is all super solid and tied together really well right now. So GPS bar, dash, nothing shakes or moves. So that's a big improvement. I really appreciate that. Turn signals are new, a new design. Maybe these are the 2024 when they added these and now they're carried over. I don't know exactly, because I think last year we got LEDs, but they say these are new for 2025. So, I mean, I like them. They're bright, they're visible. I just don't know. I don't know the durability aspect of them yet. They've added a USB port right here. So USB-C, which is nice to have. So when you have your phone, you can charge your phone on your handlebar, and that's great to have. The power outlet, no extra charge to get that, so that's great. the other new thing that they're offering is a low version of the bike. You can get a factory low version, which is 15 millimeters lower on the suspension. They're achieving the lowering by taking travel out of the suspension. So you will compromise a bit on the ride comfort and your off-road performance and your ground clearance, but you can get the lower suspension. A lot of people, seem to get confused between seat height and legroom. So those are two different measurements which you need to keep separate. They are related, but they're different things. So keep that in mind. The previous bike, people would put on low seats to get a lower reach to the ground, but that would compromise your legroom. If you lower the suspension and keep the same seat, you're retaining your legroom, but you're getting a better reach to the ground. So see how those things are actually separate. All right, well, I hope there's been some good, useful information in this video today. And don't worry, we'll be riding in episode 2. Be patient, give me some time to get caught up to that. I've got 6 bikes here at the moment and a lot of projects on my plate. So be patient, but that's coming. So I really think that the question in everyone's mind with this update is, now that they've refined the bike, improved a lot of areas of it, we might be able to get aftermarket cruise control, we have some extra stuff. Is it now sort of getting closer to that unicorn adventure bike status, that combination of sort of comfort and capability and reliability, I think, is number one probably for people. Reliability. Is it getting to that magic combination? We already know the capabilities of this bike are incredibly good, and the reliability is unmatched by any other adventure bike out there. So is it getting closer to that mythical kind of unicorn status? And is it going to be something that more people would now consider buying, where maybe they previously went to a different bike like a V-Strom or a Tuareg or a Transalp or a KTM or something like that? Is it going to bring more people in? I actually think it will. But time will tell, and we'll do the review series and we'll kind of see how things go here, and we'll see if people end up buying this new model. So stay tuned, there's a lot more to come. I hope this video has been informative. If you have questions, put that down below. I will do my best to follow up. Please support the channel. There's ways to do that down below. Thanks for watching. Ride safe. I'll see you out there.